Hi, ladies and gents. Sorry I'm not here today. I had mentioned to those of you that were in my classroom yesterday that I wasn't going to be here. I'm at IB training or meeting all day, but I will be here after school if you need me. So we are going to do just a little short introduction to some ecology stuff. So I need you to follow along with your notes. So if you would grab your iPad right now, you're going to go to Schoology, and then I'm going to show you where to find the lecture notes that I'm going to go over with you today. So let me make myself small. Whee! If you go to the new folder of Ecology right here, the blue one, and you grab the lecture folder, you will see the student version right here. Now, you'll also noted that the completed lecture is unpublished, which means you have to pay attention right now and get the stuff filled in, please. Okay? So, let me pull up my stuff, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, so the basics of ecology. Ology, please remember, always means study of. So it's the study of the interactions of an organism with another organism or other organisms and the environment. So it's the study of the interactions, okay? We are going to look at these levels of organization. So if you kind of think about how your body is organized, you have a cell. Then your cell makes a muscle or tissues, and then your tissues make an organ, like your stomach, and then a bunch of organs make the organ system, like the digestion system, and then all of those systems together make the human body. So you do cell, then tissue, then organ system, then whole body, right? Well, it's the same thing as far as levels of organization of ecology. It starts with one organism, then in a population, then a community, then an ecosystem, then a biome, and then lastly the biosphere. So we're going to start big, encompassing everything, and we're going to work our way small, okay? So biosphere, bio means earth, sphere is your globe. It's anywhere on earth that's capable of supporting life. So that means air, that means water, that means land. Yes, any of those things are part of the biosphere. So if we get one step smaller, we talk about biomes. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about biomes in chapter 33 and 34, which is what our test is on this go around. We are going to talk much more about biomes after spring break in chapter 35, because that's all chapter 35 is about, is biomes. So if you think about desert, if you close your eyes and then picture a desert, you probably have some of the same characteristics as the neighbor next to you. You probably pictured warm, maybe, dry, and then the animals and the plants that you imaged in your brain were very specific. They were probably small animals. You might have imaged sand dunes, right, like the Sierra, or if you did plants, maybe cacti, but needless to say, it wasn't like you were imagining lush tropical rainforests, which is a different biome completely. So if you look anywhere on here that has kind of this dirty mustard yellow color, that's a desert. And they're going to have all of the same climate and similar communities across the entire globe. So biosphere is everything. Biome is a very specific climate with a similar community. So we could talk about rainforest. We could talk about desert. We could talk about taiga or tundra. And we'll go through all those specifics. But as you can see, this is all color-coded for the different biomes. The next step down is ecosystem. So an ecosystem is your community of living things and their physical environment. So if we have this picture here, we have living things like the frog population and the raccoon population and the deer population and the grass population, right? And then we have their physical environment, which means the non-living things, which would be abiotic. So that would mean the sky, that would mean the water, that would mean a rock. Any of those things are abiotic. So that's an ecosystem. If you get smaller than that, you're in community. So each one of these different, so these yellow fish are in a population. The rainbow color pretty fish are in a population. The dory fishes are in a population, and they all live together. That's a community. The coral is an animal too. Population, again, smaller, is the same species inhabiting a given area. So all of the monarch butterflies in the state of Minnesota possibly are a population because they can migrate to each other. But the monarch butterflies in Minnesota compared to the monarch butterflies in Chile are two different populations, right? Because they're in two different areas. Okay. And then a species is, again, defined as similar organisms in a group that can produce fertile offspring. The key is that you have to be able to produce fertile offspring, and we've talked a lot about that, so you should know that. So, did that all make sense? If we start at the bottom, we say a species, one species, is in a population or a group. And then we have community, which is a little bigger, so it's a bunch of populations. So, let's do a savanna. We have a gazelle is the population of gazelles. Then the community would be the gazelles with the water buffalo, with the trees, with the lions. That's a community. Then the ecosystem is one bigger one, and that's with the abiotic, so the non-living stuff, the physical environment, the watering hole, the air, the rocks, the soil, that. And then we go to biome, and savanna actually happens to be in the grassland or savanna biome. So that's the next one up. And then all of the biomes together would make the biosphere. So we start really specific and we get really big. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. The last kind of concept or idea is what I want you to focus on today. And what you're going to be watching part of a video on is called ecological succession. So, succession is a change in the composition of a community over time. And it's always due to a disturbance. But there's two types of succession, so it depends on which type of disturbance you're talking about, which type of succession it fits. So, first of all, the biggest difference between primary succession and secondary succession is if there's soil or not. So, this could be an example of Hawaii. Hawaii has active lava, therefore it's sitting in a hot spot. You'll notice that there is no soil, only rocks, right? So, no soil here. Here is a forest fire happening, but that forest fire has trees and therefore has soil. The fire will not burn the soil. So this has no soil, this has soil. Here's the difference. Primary succession has no soil, and that means it needs to make soil before you can actually do succession. So let me talk just very briefly about what succession is. If I'm a farmer and I'm farming land and I decide to cut all of my crops down and not farm anymore, what'll happen in a year to the environment or the cropland when I come back and look at it? Will it have grasses? Probably. Okay. What happens if I come back in 5 years, still not having touched the land in 5 years? Will it look a little different? Will it maybe have shrubs? What if I come back in 50 years? Would I be able to tell that there was even cropland visible? At some point, maybe it'll return back to the forest that it was before I made it cropland. That process, that change over time, is called succession. And in primary succession, it takes a really long time for that to happen because you have to make soil first. So I have talked to you about the fact that if you go up the North Shore, you can see those big, giant, black boulder rocks, right? Those big boulder rocks are rocks. And if you look closely, they might look like they have splatter paint from like a paintball fight on them. And that splatter paint is actually an organism. And that organism is called lichen. And lichen actually physically breaks down the rock and makes soil. So will rain and weathering and all that stuff. But lichen actually helps speed up the process and break down soil. Or break down rocks to make soil. So primary succession would be like Hawaii. It could also be like a glacier retreat, right? So in the state of Minnesota, this is how we got all of our lakes, we were underneath a giant glacier, right? And when the glacier receded, it went all the way down to the crust and ripped everything out, therefore leaving nothing. We could also talk about a volcanic explosion. If there's 16 feet of ash, there's no soil. So we have to make soil first. We could also talk about a sand dune. Again, no soil present. All of those things would be primary succession. Secondary succession is when there is soil. So if I cut down all of the trees in a forest, deforestation, right? That's a disturbance, but there's still soil present. If there's a fire or a hurricane, or if I farm the field by plowing, again, if the soil is left intact, that's secondary succession. Secondary will happen much faster than primary. Okay? And here's what we'll see. We'll see bare rocks breaking down. We'll only see bare rocks in primary, right? Then we get those splatter paint of lichen. And then what you'll get is soil. And once you get soil, so here's the amount of soil increasing, is that we get small grasses and then shrubs and then bigger trees, and then like the climax community is the ideal trees for that area, right? So we'll see this succession happen. So here is my primary succession, Here's what lichen looks like, so breaking down that rocks, making soil. Secondary succession is just going to happen a little faster because you'll notice even at the very, very beginning, there's soil present. So it's still going to go through grasses and then shrubs and then big trees, right? It's still going to do that step-by-step process, but it just does it in a much faster pattern than it does if I go back in this pattern because I don't have to break down the rock. So primary, break down rock, secondary has soil. So secondary S, soil S. S and S go together. So here's any number of examples: plowing the field, forest fire, any of those are secondary succession. So we're going to have a pioneer species that comes in, the first initial one. Then you're going to have an intermediate species, which is like the middle ground. It may or may not like that, but it's going to be there. And then you're going to have your climax community at the end, which is your ideal, what it was before the disturbance happened, right? So hopefully that made sense. The biggest keys today are the levels of organization and the difference between primary and secondary succession. So what I'm going to have you guys do now is watch the Mount St. Helens video. And there are actually video questions that go along with it. So if you go to Schoology, move my face again. If you go to Schoology, one of two things. You can either find it in the worksheets here, the succession worksheet and Mount St. Helens video notes right here, or you can find it along the side of the thing here. So either one, go ahead and do that. I'll see you tomorrow. There is, oh, I should have pointed out, there is the video clip on the bottom that you need to answer the questions. Just answer as many as you can get done. You won't get done with the entire video today. That's okay. We're not going to watch it anymore, but at least it'll give you an example of primary succession, right? And then there is a few questions on the front of that worksheet that I do want you to do for homework. So I expect that done tomorrow when you walk in. I hope that makes sense. Thanks so much. Have a lovely day. Bye, guys.